from the station you count on for local news that matters. This is KARK 4 News at 5 in high definition.
In the past hour, the Arkansas Supreme Court paving the way for one of tonight's executions. Liddell Lee's execution is set to happen in about 2 hours. For now, Stacey Johnson's execution is still on hold. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ashley Katz.
Yeah, Bob Clausen and Ashley, just like Tuesday night, we're coming to you live from the Cummins unit here. This is home, of course, to Arkansas's death chamber. That's where the similarities basically end, because unlike Tuesday night, there are two men in cells adjacent to the death chamber, as you mentioned, Stacey Johnson and Liddell Lee. So at this point forward, it looks, as you mentioned, too, that we are on track for an execution at 7 o'clock. But then again, throughout the last day and perhaps throughout the evening, we will see a flurry of perhaps last-minute filings that could hold things up. We've got team coverage for you tonight, trying to bring all of this together. We are live with insight from Marcy Manley in Little Rock. We are live here on Cummins Prison with the very latest on what will be developing throughout the evening. We are also live in Washington, D.C. Drew Petrimo keeping an eye on the United States Supreme Court and anything that should happen up there. But first, we want to bring in Marcy Manley. And Marcy, we talked about some last-minute maneuvering, some last-minute decisions. Where does that bring us right now and into the evening?
Bob, at this point, Liddell Lee is facing execution tonight, while Johnson's death has been delayed by the Arkansas Supreme Court. Late this afternoon, the Arkansas justices eliminated another legal hurdle the state had faced by lifting an injunction that barred ADC from using one of those execution drugs. The drug company claimed the Department of Correction duped a sales rep into selling the drug without disclosing it would be used for an execution. A judge granted the injunction, which would have blocked all Arkansas executions, but the Supreme Court lifted that. Death row inmate Stacey Johnson has been issued a stay of execution. Just moments ago, the Supreme Court actually said that it would not reconsider that and leave it in place until he has had a chance to have a hearing on DNA testing. At this point, Liddell Lee does not have anything blocking his execution. We've been updating those dockets to see if there are any changes, because Lee does currently have several cases pending in state and federal courts that remain unresolved, with 2 hours until that first scheduled execution. Based on our experiences from Monday, there's plenty of time for all of this to change. Now, KARK's Drew Petrimo is following developments in the nation's capital. Drew, what implications could the U.S. Supreme Court have for these death row inmates?
Well, you talked about there still being time for things to change, and that's certainly the case here in Washington. One of the issues on the table of the Supreme Court involves a petition from inmates. They are asking the justices to reconsider a stay that was first put in place by a federal judge in Arkansas. That stay was eventually lifted by the Court of Appeals, but the inmates are asking the Supreme Court to consider reinstituting that stay. We're also waiting to hear about a next move possibly from the drug supplier. You just talked about it. The drug supplier says its drugs that are going to be used in the lethal injection protocol were acquired improperly. Their case so far was lifted by the state Supreme Court. Question now, will they appeal that to the U.S. Supreme Court? That's something we will be waiting and watching for leading up to this scheduled execution. That's the latest here live in Washington, D.C. I'm Drew Petrimo. Bob, back to you.
All right, Drew, thanks a lot. Still things are, I guess you could say, early on as far as this goes. Stephanie Sharp joining me now. We've been talking about what may or may not happen involving the condemned men tonight. But up front, we've got to talk about why we're here, and that's the loss of life. Two women were put to death or were murdered brutally in fashion, which is why the guys are here. You got to talk about the families. They've been waiting for justice for over 20 years now.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, a lot of our attention is drawn to the suspects, but of course we want to talk about the victim and the victim's families and all of this. Liddell Lee killed 26-year-old Deborah Reese in her Jacksonville home in 1993, and prosecutors say Lee hit her 36 times with a tire thumper. Reese's son was only 6 years old at the time. He says his loss still affects him every day.
He is the embodiment of the evil that should never have to exist in this world.
Prosecutors say Lee committed violent crimes against 5 women. His victims' ages range from 17 to 70. And as for Stacey Johnson, he's convicted of violently killing Carol Heath in 1993 in DeQueen. He beat, strangled, and slit Heath's throat while 2 children hid in the home. After the long legal battle, the victim's family just wants a resolution.
This has been the hardest thing I've ever had to go through my whole entire life.
We all want an end.
His son that you saw right there has grown up without a mother. The family just wants Johnson to admit to his crimes.
Steph, the families are given the opportunity to come down here and witness executions. Do you know if they'll be in attendance tonight?
Yeah, we were told by the Department of Corrections that both families have planned to come here tonight, and they will be here tonight regardless of what executions go through.
It seems like this is a big piece of closure, but it seems after 20 years, a lot of them, some of them think that maybe this day never was going to come, but it appears, at least for one of them, it may happen.
It does appear that way. And of course, you know, these victim families, they've been waiting for this for a long time, and it's been a hard, you know, couple decades for them.
But we have seen from Tuesday, things can change. Stephanie Sharp, thanks very much. One thing, though, also a lot of taxpayers say is, how much is this costing us? How much does it cost to actually keep people on death row leading up to these executions that basically take decades to get to? Arkansas Department of Correction estimated it costs about $67 a day to house a death row inmate. Breaking that down, the cost for the 8 inmates whose executions are or were set for this month, the most pricey prisoner in that group is Bruce Ward, who was here Tuesday, who did not get executed. The state has spent more than $600,000 keeping him on death row since he was first placed here in 1990. Looking at the other inmates, the state has spent more than $500,000 to house Stacy Johnson, who is here this evening. The parole board recommended clemency for Jason McGee, his stay costing the state $450,000. As of today, their time behind bars comes in $4.2 million price tag. That, of course, to taxpayers. But, you know, when it comes to the cost, Ashley, the victims' families will say the cost is time. They lost loved ones so many years ago, and they say that these inmates have been able to basically keep breathing while their loved ones had all the time stolen from them the last 20 years. So we wait and see. We know that things could change at any minute, and that's, of course, why we've got Marcy Manley so steadfast standing by to watch any late-breaking developments.
All right, and we also have a crew inside. Bob, have you heard from them about a last meal for the inmates, or at least for Liddell Lee at this point?
Haven't heard anything from them. They just got in there. They check in, and they've got to make sure they've got everything in place so they can keep us up to date on what's happening inside and then translate that to us. But we haven't heard anything about a last meal just yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Bob. And we do want to wrap this up for you. The 2 men originally scheduled to be executed tonight, you see them here, Liddell Lee and Stacy Johnson. Johnson murdered Carol Heath at her home in DeQueen in April of 1992. Lee was convicted in 1993 of murdering his neighbor, Donna Reese. That happened in Jacksonville. Liddell Lee's execution will still go on as planned tonight. You heard Marcy explain there is nothing standing in the way of his execution. However, Stacy Johnson's is on hold. And tonight after KARK 4 News at 6, we will continue our coverage online as Arkansas moves forward with Lee's execution. You can watch our live reports. We'll also have analysis for you on arkansasmatters.com, also on our Facebook page. That all starts at 6:30.
From the station you count on for local news that matters, this is your forecast first from KARK 4, your weather authority.
Heavy rains move through the natural state. Just take a look at this video from northwest Arkansas. This was Rogers earlier today. A lot of water coming out of the sky and now covering the ground. Good evening and thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Bob Clausen. Ashley has the evening off. We aren't out of the woods just yet. A tornado watch still in effect for the western part of the state. We, of course, are your weather authority. Hayden Nick standing by with a look at the very latest. Hayden, what can we expect in the next few hours and then into the morning hours?
Well, we're still watching, Bob, that tornado watch, as you just mentioned, until 1 o'clock in the morning. But I want to take a moment to put emphasis on what's happening right now, and that's a severe thunderstorm warning that's in effect for Izard County. That's where the bulk of the thunderstorm is now until 10:15 p.m., so another 15 minutes. And really, this is not for the wind problem. It's really for hail that's up close to about 1 inch in diameter, so be watching that very carefully. It's right on the minimum of the threshold needed for a severe thunderstorm warning, but you can also have some gusty winds with this, a lot of lightning, and a brief moderate to heavy downpour with this system. Overall, that's just going to continue to move off east-northeast at 45 to 50 miles an hour. It's pretty fast moving. Already moved across Highway 5 past Optimus. Will likely reach Ban Mill and Melbourne. If it holds strength, then could produce some smaller size hail as that continues on. Overall, the big picture shows we're still waiting on this line to push in. It's a lot slower than we realized earlier in the evening when this was getting started, and really has not gained momentum from it overall, and strength for that matter too. There's only a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings close to the Red River on the Oklahoma-Texas line, and that's just about it. There's the stationary boundary where we've been watching anything south of this having the greatest threat along and south of there, and then seeing some isolated risks for maybe a strong thunderstorm popping up north of that line. Tornado watch still in effect for our western counties. That does include Yale, Montgomery, Polk, and Pike counties until 1 o'clock in the morning. They might let that expire a little bit sooner, so we're going to have to watch this over the next couple of hours and see if anything does get canceled. But right now, conditions are still favorable for maybe a thunderstorm to produce an isolated tornado. The severe risk still in effect, enhanced for that area that is highlighted under the tornado watch. Slight risk for the areas towards the west. Don't forget to stick around in the next few minutes. We're going to break down more of how this evening's going to pan up whenever we see this line pushing through. So we're going to get to that in just a few minutes, but we're going to take it back to Bob for now.
A phone rings. The message: Liddell Lee had been executed by lethal injection. Moments later, Solomon Graves from the Arkansas Department of Correction making that announcement to the media. And tonight, we're getting a better picture as to what transpired last night behind prison walls. According to Arkansas Department of Correction, Lee was moved from his cell and preparations for his execution began at 11:21. 11:44, we're then told that they asked Lee if he had any last words. He was silent. A minute later, the execution process began. At 11:56, Liddell Lee was pronounced dead. Stacey Johnson was also scheduled to die last night, but his stay of execution was not appealed. He is convicted of killing Carol Heath and DeQueen in 1993, who 2 young children were in the home when she was killed. KRK4's Mitch McCoy went back to the scene of the crime with the victim's son to get his reaction to the court's decision. Mitch, thanks very much. And people in the neighborhood where Lee's victim, Deborah Reese, lived are responding to the state's decision to move forward with the execution. Lamont Moore now lives across the street from where the victim was killed. He's been following the news of the executions closely. Moore says he only found out this morning that the state carried out Lee's execution because he'd gone to bed before it happened.
Feel bad for both families. I do. It's hard on everybody. This has been a long, long process.
Moore says he hopes now the victim's family will find closure. One of the reporters who witnessed Lee's execution last night has now sat in on 13 of them. Sean Murphy with the Associated Press called it a very somber experience. He said it's not only a responsibility for civilians and journalists to witness an execution, but also somewhat of a requirement.
It is important that this power that the state is exercising is not taking place behind closed doors. And so I just think it's an important role that we play as journalists to be present and witness what happens and see if things go wrong.
There were 3 media witnesses and about 12 civilian witnesses in Lee's execution. On Monday, another round of executions scheduled. Jack Jones and Marcel Williams have been on death row since the early 1990s. Jones was found guilty in the death of Mary Phillips, who was beaten, raped, and choked with an electrical cord in June of 1995. Williams found guilty of abducting and killing Stacey Ray Erickson as she stopped at a Jacksonville gas station in November of 1994. And today, Jones and Williams' attorneys argued in federal court today against one of the lethal injection drugs. They claim that drug, midazolam, will not work on them due to their obesity. District Judge Christine Baker denied their motions. The court determined that the evidence presented in the hearings fell short of demonstrating a significant possibility that the Arkansas protocol is sure or very likely to cause severe pain and needless suffering. And we will be live at the Cummins Unit on Monday and following any last-minute filings throughout the weekend. We're going to keep you up to date both on air and online at arkansasmatters.com, as well as on all of our social media platforms. Law enforcement are working around the clock to find the person they believe is responsible for at least 6 assaults in just about a month. They've happened in North Little Rock and in Sherwood. KRK4 Stephanie Sharp went along with police today as they patrol for the suspect. Steph, what'd you find out?
Yeah, Bob. Well, it's believed the suspect is targeting women. North Little Rock Police reminds people to, of course, be aware of your surroundings. And the chief also says if you have any information at all, you're asked to call authorities. Bob?
All right, Steph, thanks very much. An Uber driver robbed at gunpoint, speaking out about the terrifying experience. Early Tuesday morning, Robert Behringer took a customer to the Briarwood Apartments on Rodney Parham. He was asked by his customer to wait while he ran inside. Then less than 5 minutes later, Behringer says 2 men approached him in his car with a gun. Behringer says he dropped his phone, got out of the car, and ran.
Well, it was definitely a moment of full-body panic, but then I just, okay, if he's going to shoot me, he's going to shoot me. If he's not, then maybe I can get out of this. So.
Behringer says he believes that they wanted to steal his car because he heard one of them yell to the other one to get in. But when he got back to the apartments with police, his car was still there, running. Barron just says he thinks that it's because it was a stick shift, and that's what kept the guys from stealing it, because they apparently were looking for an automatic. A former Arkansas congressman who loved his home district and was well respected inside the Beltway of Washington, D.C., passed away due to complications from Parkinson. Jay Dickey, a Republican from Pine Bluff, was the first Republican elected to the 4th District, where he served from 1993 until 2001. And he touched many lives. Many politicians today sending their condolences. The governor saying this about Dickey: Jay was one of those unique people who loved life and everyone around him. He had the privilege of serving with Jay in Congress, and I have never seen anyone who was so determined to fight for the people in his district. He made friends easily, and he stuck by them. I played basketball with Jay in the house gym, where, like everyone else in his life, he was a competitor. He will be missed. I had the chance to interview Congressman Dickey a couple of times. I can say this: he was a rather imposing figure, a very tall man, at least to me. And when you spoke to him, he looked you right in the eye, as if he was trying to figure out what you were going to say next, and more often than not, he did. And just the point where you started to get really nervous, he'd crack that Jay Dickey smile and then lighten the mood and let you know what you were asking. He loved the state. He loved the 4th District and Pine Bluff. And when he was in D.C., it was very important, he would talk about this, that he slept on his office couch every night. He went to bed right after work, got up and started to work again. And then on Friday, got home as quick as he could. When he was home, he traveled the district, enjoying it and talking to the people who called it home. Congressman Jay Dickey passing away at 77.
And breaking news right now into Fox 16. Little Rock police are responding to a shooting just off Interstate 30 at the Spring Valley Apartments. We have not been able to confirm any injuries or if anyone has been shot at this time. We have a crew on the scene right now, and we hope to bring you a live report a little later in this newscast. You can follow us both on air and online for the latest. Well, heavy winds and rain continue to move through the state. Good evening, everyone. I'm Donna Terrell. Kevin is off tonight. Our team is tracking the weather both on the ground and on radar, and we want to begin now with our chief meteorologist, Jeff Baskin. Jeff, of course, we're just wondering, what are we looking at right now?
We have some rain and some thunderstorms moving into the state from central Arkansas by about mid-morning. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll have more radar views and timeout when that line is going to move through the state.
All right, and thank you, Jeff. We also have a crew on the ground tonight who's been following this weather all afternoon. Fox 16's Charmaine Nero is in Clark County tonight. Charmaine, what are you seeing this evening?
Well, hello, Donna. We've been out here pretty much throughout the afternoon. Of course, stay tuned to fox16.com for any updates. Donna reporting live here in Arkadelphia. Going to send it back to you in the studio.
All right, Charmaine, thanks a lot for that. And the Arkansas Storm team is on standby should severe weather strike. We will be there for you on the air, online, and make sure you and your family are safe. So keep it right here on Fox 16.
And I talked to him, and I was letting him know how proud I was of him. And then that he, you know, I was just letting him know that I'd be checking up on you all the time while you at school.
Tonight we are learning more about the Pine Bluff High School student police say was found murdered earlier this week. Investigators say a 16-year-old admitted to shooting the teen. Fox 16's Jonathan Roselle sat down for an exclusive interview with the victim's aunt. Jonathan.
And Donna, the aunt tells me her family is hurting.
And back now to our breaking news story. Little Rock police are responding to a shooting that happened just off Interstate 30 at the Spring Valley Apartments. Fox 16's Mitch McCoy on the scene. Mitch, we understand this was a double shooting. Is that right?
Yeah, Donna, I was able to confirm within the last couple of minutes that this is a double shooting investigation at this apartment complex right off of Interstate 30. This is a pretty good stretch of road here before we get to the Geyer Springs. So this apartment complex corners Interstate 30 and Mitchell Drive, and that's right off of Geyer Springs. So it's kind of off in that corridor area. I'm going to step off and just let you guys see kind of what we're seeing at this point.
And back now to our breaking news story. Little Rock police continuing to investigate a double shooting. At least one person has died. This happened at the Spring Valley Apartments. That's just off I-30. We once again go back to Fox 16's Mitch McCoy, who's at the scene of this shooting, to find out if there's any new news to report. Mitch.
Yeah, Donna, within the last 5 or 10 minutes, we confirmed that one person is dead. Another is in serious condition after a shooting here at Spring Valley Apartments. This is right off of Interstate 30, and I want to get straight to the person with all of the information. It's Officer Steve Moore with the Little Rock Police Department. Can you tell us just what you have so far in terms of information from out here?
All right. It's very early in the investigation, but about 8:40 tonight, officers received a call here to 8701 I-30 for a shooting just occurred. Officers got here rather quickly, immediately found 2 victims in the courtyard of the complex here. Can confirm that one of those individuals has died from their wounds. The other has been taken to a local hospital with serious injuries. At this time, we don't have any suspect information or what caused the shooting to occur.
Do we know anything about the victims, the people that were shot?
Other than their males, I don't have ages or anything like that right now.
Okay, is there an active search right now for a suspect, the one that's responsible for pulling the trigger?
Yeah, we're trying to get as much information as we can to see suspect or suspects and see what we can look for.
Very active scene. You guys have been on the scene for less than an hour now, so you guys are still trying to collect everything and from witnesses and people, obviously a lot of witnesses out here because it's an apartment complex. Does that help the investigation at all?
Yes, hopefully we'll have people that will cooperate with us and people that saw what happened with as you can see, there's a lot of people out here even now, and maybe that'll help us find out who's responsible for this.
Okay, we're seeing a lot of crime scene tape behind this building right here. We're not able to see it here in our picture. Is that where the shooting happened? Was that, I'm being told, maybe near a pool?
Yes, I know it's back over our shoulder here around in the middle of the courtyard, in the middle of the complex.
Okay, right in the middle. All right, officer, we appreciate your time. Obviously, Donna, a very active scene out here. One person dead, another seriously injured in a double shooting here. Spring Valley Apartments, it's in Southwest Little Rock. Still working on suspect information. We'll pass it along. Updates on air and online as we get them. Reporting live in Southwest Little Rock, Mitch McCoy, Fox 16 News.